Bring the Borough Council meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Mr. Lavenberg is in the waiting room right now. All right, so we will start at 6 o'clock with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Council President Lavenberg will be joining us on Zoom tonight, so I will be running council meeting tonight. So we'll start with the personal appeals part one. If anybody from the public has a personal appeal, you have 5 minutes to state your appeal, and please state your name and address for the record. Anybody in the public here have a personal appeal? You will get special presentations. Okay. Anybody else? All right. How about anybody from Zoom? If you have an appeal, please unmute yourself.
That's my daughter.
Oh, that's your, okay. Okay, it's just Brent and the mayor's daughter, so we're good. All right, so there's no personal appeals. Do we have any members of council have a community minute? Okay. Oh, yes, I forgot. Just for the record, Councilwoman McManaman is absent today. And we have special presentations. For the special presentations, we'll start with Lehigh County Executive Phil Armstrong. I
don't know about a special presentation or not, because I show up once a year to kind of just say hello and let you know a little bit about what's going on in the county. And your solicitor and I have been together more now than my wife and I. And the mayor, you did an excellent job at the mayor's banquet last week. She did Emmaus proud. But, lots of great reasons why you want to come here. Just a little kind of update. First thing I want to go over so I don't forget. With me, I brought Yorman De La Rosa. And the last couple of years with the CARES funding, the American Rescue Funds, the grants that we've been getting, there's been a lot of workings back and forth with the different municipalities in Lehigh County. So much so that I thought, you know, what we really need to do at Lehigh County is have a community liaison person. We set out the application, interviewed a number of people. We're really, really happy with Yorman. He's a member of the Peace Corps in his past. He has worked for a state representative. He's got government experience. He's on the ball. So what we did is give him the job as community liaison person, that if there is any question in any community, he's going to pass his cards out tonight. We've printed up a number of cards for him. But so, you know, I hate to say the old saying, who are you going to call? But if there is a problem, we find a lot of times people are calling the county and not knowing who would I talk to about this problem. Well, now, whoever the problem is with, he will make sure that department takes care of it. And if he doesn't, he'll be looking at the unemployment line. So he does a great job on it. He really does. But that's the first thing I wanted to do, is to introduce him. He's coming with me to all of the meetings. Next, the Morning Call called me the other day and said, you know, my legacy was, they thought I saved the pigs. Now I've saved Pip the mouse with the museum. I'm hoping you don't have anything that needs to be saved right now, because we're getting a kind of crisis like that. But the Iron Pigs, the good news is they're opening up tomorrow night. The construction is done, and it looks like it's coming in at budget, which is good. And it, I think, was the greatest example of how the state, the county, the owners of the Iron Pigs, Northampton County, and even the Chamber of Commerce pitched in and made this happen. It would have been a major crisis for Lehigh County because, yes, we own the stadium. No, it's not paid for. And if we had lost the pigs, we still have to pay for the stadium, and we have decades to go on that. The nice part about the pigs ownership was fantastic. They've worked with us. In fact, at our meeting this month, they're going to sign a lease to go to 2053. So we're going to get the money back over time, but we were able to keep the pigs in the Lehigh Valley, and I think that was an important part of our quality of life. But we are also working on farmland preservation. I'm really proud, especially out here in this area, that we're now ranked about 4th in the state. We have over 800 farms that we have set aside now. It's up there, and it makes us one of the top 4 in the states of preserving farmland. Something that might concern you is I know the new radios that we're going to have to, all of the police are going to need. We put it in the capital budget. We are moving toward a plan to make sure we get these things out, and how they're going to be paid for is something that we're still working out and, helping in. We're also looking at budgeting for the police, a kit to go in every police car that'll last for 5 years, that will kind of be a medical emergency kit. And we've met with I think Chief Marks is the president of this. Yeah, and we're working with him to do that. As you know, we're about to pass this month a $1,500 tax rebate program for volunteer firemen, because going through the entire county, especially in the rural areas, it's really difficult for people to be volunteer firemen. So we're going to try to encourage people to sign up and help with their fire departments. That's the only, we can't do it for the police or nurses or teachers. By Pennsylvania law, the only group we could do that for is volunteer firemen. And we're going to do that. And it's going to be brought up at this month's meeting. So that's just kind of like the highlights of what's going on. But more, and as your solicitor knows, I've mostly come to see if you have any questions. Do you want to know anything about what's going on? Cedar Brook, we're ready to go. We're going to start building. We've got the hole in the ground now. And as you saw, Senator Casey has chipped in. He's got us a $525,000 grant. It will be a $60 million project, but every dollar we get, is certainly a help. And I think it's very important that we're going to make sure there are only 15 counties left in the state of Pennsylvania that still have a county-run home. Most of them have gotten out of the business, but for 3 cents of your tax dollar is about the percentage that we take to maintain that facility. And I think it's well worth it to keep the most vulnerable population, that they need to have a place like that, because without that, it would go private. And if people could not afford the private, we'd be increasing homeless. And that's a thing I don't want to have happen, especially when I'm county executive. But anyway, questions? Yes.
Bill, thank you so much for showing up at these meetings. You have quite a few of them that you managed to get out to. I'm delighted to hear about the funding of the radios. Does that include EMS personnel as well?
For the radios?
Emergency.
Yeah, it's going to be for all of them. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
They're expensive radios, like those. Yeah. Well, we're hoping to get, by buying quantity. We heard 6,000 beginnings. They're already down 1,000. So we're hearing like that.
Wonderful news. Thank you.
Yeah. I think if you ask people, public safety is one of their most major concerns, that they want the people that they elect to make sure that's taken care of, so.
Any other questions?
Well, I was at a Mass High School 2 weeks ago, they had an hour's worth of questions. Great kids too, by the way, really great kids. Anything from the public, Mass? Well,
Thank you.
I'm eating my supper a little earlier. Yes.
See you next year.
Okay.
You found us this year too.
Yes, yes, there's 25 I have to get to, and I'm going in for major surgery in 2 weeks for my back. I want to be able to stand straight up again. So I'm trying to get them all in now. Before I can.
Good luck.
All right, then I'll be back on my bicycle.
You're more than welcome to stay for a deputy chief swearing in here if you want to.
Oh, okay, okay, that's why they're on. Okay. I don't know, maybe they were ready to. Yes.
You're welcome.
Good luck, Travis.
Thank you.
You guys do what you're gonna do, please do your child. Thank you.
Good seeing you again.
I know. I feel like a
Well,
forty,
sure
right?
you want to give me another one?
Thank you.
Never heard.
Okay, with that, we'll move to our next special presentation, and that's the swearing into ceremony to swear in our deputy chief of police, Brian Hampshire. With that, I'll turn it over to the mayor, Mayor Gilbert. No, I can't.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Brian Hampshire,
I, Brian Hampshire,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States,
Pennsylvania Constitution,
the Pennsylvania Constitution,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and the ordinances of the Borough of Emmaus.
and the ordinances of the Borough of Emmaus,
And I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will uphold, obey, and enforce the law
that I will uphold, obey, and enforce the law
without consideration to a person's race,
without consideration to a person's race,
color, sex, religious creed, sexual orientation,
color, sex, religious creed, sexual orientation,
age, national origin, ancestry,
age, national origin, ancestry,
handicap, or disability.
handicap, or disability,
That I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office with
That I will-
fidelity.
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office with fidelity
As Deputy Chief of Police in the Emmaus Police Department.
as Deputy Chief of Police in the Emmaus Police Department.
Congratulations, Pete.
We'll take a small recess so we can get pictures, the family can get pictures, and anybody else who wants pictures here. So we'll take a recess here at 6:13. We'll resume the council session at 6:19 PM. Next, we have the reading of the minutes from March 20th, 2023. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes? Councilman Hart, motion, any second? Councilwoman Baumgartner, any comments or questions or changes? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Passes 6-0. There are no decisions on bids tonight, correct? Correct. All right, for communications, we have a volunteer resignation, Dalton Link from the Shade Tree Commission and the Emmaus Arts Commission. So Shane, you'll send him a thank you letter for his volunteer service. Yep. Then we have 3 communications, one for road closure for the request of a block party, one for the farewell to summer event, and one for old fashioned Christmas. All 3 of those are recurring events. So we'll turn those over to administration to handle those 3 requests. We also have the resignation of a full-time paramedic, April Shield, and her effective date is May May 22nd, 2023. And the last communication we have in the packet is the resignation of Code Officer Robert Hammond, and his effective date is April 28th. Do we have anybody else have any other communications that are not in our packet? All right. Borough's engineer report. We do not have an engineer's report tonight. And with that, we'll turn it over to the solicitor. Do we have a report tonight?
Very briefly, just to let everybody know, I've been working with the borough manager with respect to a Comcast franchise agreement. And there are a few other items that have been discussed recently in the executive session that I do not have any updates for, but we'll keep the borough manager posted and he will provide information to all of you. That's all I have. Progress.
Thank you. All right, next we'll go to new business. We'll handle these ordinances one at a time. These all came from the Public Safety Committee. So as we get through each one, I'll turn it over to the committee chair, Mr. Hart, but I'll read the ordinances. So first one, we have ordinance 1241, an ordinance of the Borough of Emmaus amending chapter 15 of the Consolidated Code of Ordinances, extending residential permit parking areas to additional streets throughout the Borough of Emmaus, the first reading being April 3rd, 2023. Mr. Hart, do you want to add any comments?
I do. Thank you, Mr. There have been numerous complaints about the parking surrounding the high school. We do have permanent parking there presently. I've asked the assistant borough manager to put up our map of the area. And after the police did some consultation with the neighbors in that area and a lot of surveys, the yellow area marked on the map are the areas that we are suggesting we extend the permanent parking. And by the way, this would be effective August 15th. It will take that long to put the appropriate signs up, etc. I wish I could say that this is a permanent solution, but I'm afraid like squeezing the balloon will have people going out to other areas in the borough after the permanent parking is in place. But this will help these. So I'll put that in the form of a motion.
So the motion, is there a second?
Effective date.
He said. We have a motion and an effective date. Is there a second? Councilman Valiant, seconds. Any other comments or questions regarding ordinance 1241? Councilwoman.
I have some questions.
Go ahead, Councilman Lavenberg.
Was there any consideration extending Ridge Street to 6th Street? Because I see that as the next problem spot. If you look at the map, it would be on the bottom right corner by Lions Field. Was that considered at all? Because I just picture them going there next.
So no, Mr. Laberg, no, the answer was no, we didn't have that discussion. I do know that the chief of police had made a recommendation and the committee had actually extended it even further based on some discussions. As Mr. Hart was saying, it's like squeezing a balloon. We have a feeling that we're probably going to be revisiting. That's probably going to be a section. I have a feeling those yellow lines are going to keep extending out.
Okay.
But no, they didn't specifically discuss that, just that we're pretty confident that we're going to continue to revisit this as the school continues to grow. But you know, they continue to only allow seniors to have permits there. So we think that you're going to be talking about this again in a year, 2 years,
Okay.
and in future years for sure.
All right. It's been a while since I've done the parking permit issue, several years. But anyhow, on page 2, under 5E, it says by signing a petition, a petitioner agrees to pay for the permit. What happens to the people that don't sign the permit, and do they pay, and how much is a permit?
Yeah, so
It's a violation of your parking.
yeah,
Do you want me to answer that?
the permit, I think for that area is like $1, isn't
Yeah,
it?
then it's up to each individual if they want.
Yeah, I think it's $1 for the residents in that area. If they don't have a permit, then it goes down to the parking ordinance for violations.
Okay.
things that we did, Mr. Ladenburg, is A through G have been established for years, okay?
Right.
What we did was we added H for this ordinance, and that is that it doesn't necessarily take a petition for council to do this. The council can unilaterally examine this by working with the police department and adding additional areas.
Okay.
Such as Ridge Street, right? And so if we continue to see that it's growing and expanding, Borough Council is going to have the right now because of letter H in 5 there, that they'll be able to take that action without, you know, a petition coming forward.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. And lastly, I had a resident who is retired ask me what happens when he has family and friends visit him. How's that work?
Yeah, and that's a good question. We didn't talk about that too
No,
much in the
we have
committee.
visitor passes.
Okay.
They can actually come in and ask for a visitor pass.
Do they have to get them for specific dates, or can they have like a couple for like if they have a family member that visits all the time or a friend?
I believe it's there.
That I'm not
I
sure.
thought it was 72 hours in your ordinance that they can stay. But I'd have to look at that, Councilman Lavenberg, but I believe your ordinance says it's for a period of 72 hours, the temporary passes. But again, let me look it up and get you an answer, but they have to get that for each time. So there's no permanent passes unless that person buys a permit.
I believe, Mr. Ladenburg, that if you look at the Consolidated Code of Ordinances, all we did in this ordinance was we amended 404.4, point 4 and point 5. I think later on in that ordinance, I think it discusses that in the code itself.
Okay, I'm just asking because I could see that. I mean, suppose you have somebody that visits weekly, or you know, every Wednesday as an example, to go get a permit all the time, it'd be crazy. But I also would imagine that it depends on if a neighbor calls on you or not. But because I would imagine you're going to call if you see a student park there versus somebody else parking there.
Any other
But-
comments?
No, that's all.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Was there any discussion with the school district or high school principal or anything?
So we've talked about this. This has been a conversation with them over the years. Here's the thing. They have no way to govern whether or not a child can drive their car and park on a public street. But we've talked to them over the years about their parking lot, where it's designated, what it's designated for. I mean, for the decade that I've been here, the decade plus, that's been a conversation with the chiefs of police. And the reality is they aren't allowed to govern a student driving and parking on a public street, no matter what they do. They're not going to be able to govern it.
It was less to address the problem and more that they have awareness of how big of an issue it's become.
They've
Yeah.
been made aware of it.
I would only ask, like, once the map is done, when they have start a school year, let them have some maps that they or copy. They can make their own copies for all I care. They can pay for that
For who?
But-
The school?
to give to parents or kids that are driving to school. I mean, I know my kids drove there. And
So
they-
what you're doing is you're giving them the map to say, hey, park in this neighborhood instead of that
Oh
neighborhood.
no, this is no parking. You know,
The whole idea is like, we're trying to encourage them to give up on
There's
the,
gonna be signs, correct?
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
gonna be signs. Councilwoman Baumgartner?
When the police were doing a study, did they survey or interview? Because I'm in this neighborhood. So did they survey and interview people?
I know they did sampling of residents in the area, and there were multiple drive arounds in the area comparing days and different weeks as well. They did, this has been going on for quite some time. And to your other point, you know, if we were Parkland in the middle of a cornfield, we would simply add some more parking for the students. We don't have that luxury in Mance. There's no more areas which to put new parking lots for students. So we're stuck with this squeezing the public.
Right, so when the next block comes,
Yeah.
what is our
So, Ms. Baumgartner, when you live in that area, as I know, and I don't live far from there either, we've driven by there many times, and the one street, Franklin, I believe it is, right? That's the main issue. So we did suggest closing off some other ones, because we know it's all it's gonna do is go another 100 feet, but our thoughts were, how far are we gonna go the first time? Yes, it's gonna probably change, but let's just try to address the main street and then make it a little more inconvenient for them to park somewhere, and then we'll address it when they do decide to walk that far, if they do decide to walk that far. Some people don't like to walk. So, any other comments?
Yeah, I would just suggest that, like we had previously said a couple times, this isn't going to be the end all. You're going to be revisiting this, but, you know, I think at the committee level, the question was like, where do we stop today? Right? I mean, we could do the entire north end of the town. But like, where do we stop today, right? Is this far enough for us to try to curb the problem a little bit? So we think, and we're confident that this is gonna be a trial and almost a trial and error kind of situation where we have to go out there and observe through the course of next school year what effect it had. If it just pushed them out, we have to revisit again.
Yeah, and at some point it'll be closer to walk from Upper Milford than Emmaus.
Yeah.
So the only thing I'll say
It
is,
will.
all right, so it's mainly seniors that park at the school. I get that, right? So my daughter was a junior and she'd walked, it's 2+ miles to school. She drove to school instead. As a junior, fortunately, we had a friend that lived and let us park in their driveway because we didn't no parking. But if it's a resident of the borough and it's their child and they pay their taxes here too, they can't park on a street near that building. I don't know if that's the thing. I get it, you're saying and it's selective, but if they're paying their taxes here too, and they're not, their kid who just happens to be a junior can't park in that lot, can't park close to school. I don't know if that's right either. Just
They're all students.
they're student, but their parent, they live here.
They may not live in the borough.
I'm saying though, the ones that do live in the borough, my daughter did it.
That'll be
She
hard
had to do it for a year
That'll be
because-
hard to enforce. That'll be hard to enforce.
I get you, but I'm just saying.
You can't, unfortunately, you can't enforce everything.
This is aimed to try to help the quality of life of the people that actually live in the neighborhood. That's what this is aimed for. You know, I mean, that's what this is about. This is about the fact that these people can't park anywhere close to their homes because a student parks there at 7 in and doesn't leave sometimes till 4 or 5 at night because they're in sports. That's what this is aiming to do.
They're parking their driveways in
And the parking driveways in.
on stuff like that.
And I actually don't know if a fire truck would be able to get through Franklin Street.
No,
They're being parked on both sides.
no, they would not be able to get through there. Not from what I saw driving by there. Any other comments or?
Yeah, if I could add, at the beginning of the school year, it's not really an issue. It's as the school year goes, more particularly the spring, is because more students are getting their license and there's more drivers, and then you have a graduating class, and then you have new kids getting their licenses. But usually the beginning of the year is not an issue. As you notice, we didn't get this complaint till maybe, mid-year of the school year. So
November.
Yeah, it's about November when
The first one.
we got the first one. Yeah.
yeah.
First person to show up at public safety showed up.
So anyhow, just an observation. That's
Yeah.
all.
Questions? All right, so this is a roll call vote on ordinance 1241. Councilman Lavenberg,
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner,
Aye.
Councilman Anders,
Aye.
Councilman Dahlia,
Aye.
Councilman Hart,
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne, aye, passes 6-0. All right, next we have ordinance, thanks for the discussion, because again, we all know this is gonna be a moving target, so those were good comments. Ordinance 1242, an ordinance of the Borough of Emmaus amending chapter 15 of the Consolidated Code of Ordinances, extending school zone parking restrictions on portions of Harrison Street, amending 2-hour parking requirements in certain sections of Main Street, and amending disabled parking hours at a portion of North Fifth Street. This is the first reading on April 3rd, 2023, and I will turn this over to John Hart also.
Thank you, Mr. President. I direct you to the the photo appearing on the screen. This recommendation came to us from the police department, wishing to extend that area based on their surveillance of that area almost on a daily basis. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance. 42.
So we have a
I'll
second by Councilman Lavenberg. Any comments or questions?
I just want to clarify just a little bit, there are multiple parts of this ordinance. So rather than us writing 6 different ordinances, this one had to do specifically with 3 different pieces of parking. One was, as Mr. Hart had stated, with the school zone. The second one had to do with what we felt was a clerical mistake in a previous ordinance, amending section 406, where somehow the parking time limit on Main Street got switched to 30 minutes in the ordinance. It was still meant to stay at 2 hours. So we fixed that when it came to our attention. And then the last one was what we felt was kind of a similar mistake on North Fifth Street in front of a church. Signs had always said Sundays only. We had discovered the ordinance didn't say that, so they switched the ordinance back, or they switched the signs back. When they put the new signs up, they made it 24/7. We made the ordinance in line with what the sign should say, and that is for Sundays only in front of that church. So those are the 2 additions that were more minor in terms of it was originally supposed to be what it is now. But as Mr. Hart pointed out, that's the most significant piece of the ordinance.
Any other comments or questions?
If I could add that the handicap parking or disabled parking in front of that church is the same as the disabled parking at the St. John's where we had our meetings. Those are all also only for Sundays. Just to point it out to you because
Yes.
And for events that they have during the week, they have their own parking lot that people can park in.
Yep.
That has additional disabled parking.
Yep. So, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, roll call vote. Councilman Lavenberg.
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner.
Aye.
Councilman Anders.
Aye.
Councilman Balliet.
Aye.
Councilman Hart.
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne, aye. Passes 6-0. The second reading was May 1st, at the May 1st meeting, and also the second reading of the ordinance 1241 will be at the May 1st meeting. So next we have ordinance 1243, an ordinance of the Borough of Emmaus amending chapter 6 of the Consolidated Code of Ordinances, repealing a section of part 3, alarms and automatic protection devices, including sections of subsection 6-302, subsection 6-303, subsection 6-308 to amend sections of the code that are not enforced. This is the first reading on April 3rd, and we will turn this over to Councilman Hart.
Thank you. This is an archaic legacy of a time when there were a few security alarm systems in the borough, and they wanted to keep track of them. As you all know, there are numerous alarms throughout the boroughs, and people are picking them up probably weekly. I talked to the chief beforehand. We get 10 false alarms a week. And I want to emphasize, we are not changing the penalty for numerous false alarms. That is staying in the ordinance. This is simply removing the requirement to register your alarm system. And it was recommended by the police department. With that, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1243.
So we have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Baumgartner. Any comments or questions?
So what actually does this? What does it achieve for them?
They don't have to register.
Yeah, so it repeals 3 sections of the chapter because they all have to do with the same thing. And that is, one is you have to register. Second one is if you don't register, and third one is the penalty if you violate either of those. Bottom line is they just don't have to, if you adopt this, businesses will not have to register their alarm system with the police department. And I could sit here and ask any business owner in the borough, do you have your system registered? And probably about 95% of them will say no.
But theoretically,
Because they're not aware.
Doesn't have a good way of tracking.
Well, yeah, and the police department has said, like, this is something that in the last 20 years, they have not.
Correct.
They've not enforced and people haven't been registering, and this came about because a business actually took it upon themselves to look at the ordinance online and contacted them, and some of the older officers were looking at each other like, what are they talking about?
But just to clean it up and make it realistic, with what really
Yeah.
happens.
It has nothing to do with response.
Correct.
No.
Police department will respond to all calls that come into them from call centers, et cetera.
But the reality is now, you know, there's readily available alarm systems at your own house that technically you'd have to, per the current ordinance, you'd have to register.
Any other comments, questions? All right, again, this is a roll call vote. Councilman Lavenberg,
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner,
Aye.
Councilman Anders,
I,
Councilman Valiant,
Aye.
Councilman Hart,
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne, aye. 6-0. Second reading for this ordinance will be May 1st also. And that is it with our new business and our ordinances here. So we'll go to unfinished business part 2. There's none. Items not on the agenda. Does anybody from council have any items not on the agenda? All right, next we'll go to the mayor's report. Mayor Gilbert.
Thank you. I have nothing for action, nothing to report, other than my list of activities that you have in your iPads. I'll report progress.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the Public Works Committee report. Chairman Anders.
thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing for official action this evening. Our next meeting is Wednesday, April 19th at 4 p.m. via Zoom. With that, I'll report a progress.
Thank you. Next, we have Health, Sanitation and Codes, Chairman Valiant.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We have nothing for official action. We did not have a meeting last month. The Board of Health did meet. Is there anything important that you'd like to update on that, John? No update there. Our next meeting will be April 26th at 4:45, and with that, I'll report progress.
Thank you. Next, we have Parks and Recreation, Chairwoman Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Our committee has not met since the last council meeting. We do meet tomorrow via Zoom, April 4th, 4:45 p.m. for progress.
Thank you. Next, we have Public Safety, Chairman Hart.
Thank you again, Mr. Vice President. We already handled the 3 ordinances that came out of the Public Safety Committee. There weren't any additional action items. Meeting notes of March 30th are included. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 27th at 9 a.m. on Zoom. With that, I'll report progress.
Thank you. Next, we have General Administration, Councilman Lavenberg. Do you want to handle this or should I?
I'll handle it. I'll just mention though that since I'm using my iPad for the Zoom, I'm not able to look at the agenda. So I wrote it down. I'm reading my scribble. So we have the construction change order for Borough Hall, and we have some options. It was the second attachment if you wanted to look at it, and it was number 1 was to cut out and replace stone at 31 locations at a cost of $63,001. Then there was a second one of cut out and replace 15% of the brick joints for $8,609. And then the third one was cut out and replace all stone joints with grapevine joint for $166,837 with an alternate to
match the existing raised ribbon.
oh, I have math written there. Okay, match existing raised ribbon joint for a cost of $21,038. So I don't know how we want to handle this. I maybe start with discussion and then work towards a motion, or go to a motion. I don't know what would be the best way to do this.
I think that makes sense if you're okay with that, Brent.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can kick it off for you guys if you want. So first of all, the very first attachment in your iPads is the drawings with the highlighted areas. Okay. I did invite council members to go to the building a couple weeks ago to meet with the mason. A couple of you did. I know it was raining at that point, but we did have a good conversation with the mason about it. There are numerous photos of the wall of the building with some of the grout missing that you see. There's also if you don't have it, the last 3 photos, if you refresh your iPad, we added what the grapevine joint mock-up looks like versus what the ribbon joint and versus what a standard joint mock-up looks like. So you can see when they talk about ribbon joint versus grapevine joint, you can see the difference in them. Essentially, the problem is, you have a 100-year-old building that hasn't been touched, as you know. I mean, that's why the project costs the way that it is for a long time, including repointing the building. So when they went and power washed the building and when they started tearing out the 100-year-old windows around the building, the joint compound just fell out. When they power wash it, it started to fall out. Some of the pointing is the reason why the building is leaking over in the upper corner of the council chambers, as well as around the windows in the upstairs. So that has to happen. You really don't have much of a choice than to at least do the $63,000 option, because that takes care of the windows, that takes care of the major, what are essentially see-through areas of the building. Okay. The conversation turned into, if you're doing this patchwork, how much longer is it going to be before we really need to do the rest of it, right? And so what would that cost look like? And Mr. Hart, I know that you were present when he talked. I think Mr. Ballet, you were there? Were you at that? And the thing that struck me with the mason was, I thought he would say, 15 years or 20 years. He said 5 to 7 years is really what he thinks the life expectancy is if you just patch it in. He thinks that's how long it would be before you end up doing the rest of the job. Now, the problem with the job, as Mr. Ladenburg pointed out, is significantly more money to do the entire building, obviously. And the question ends up being, do you want to do it now or do you want to do it later? But you're going to end up doing it, is what I gathered out of what the mason and what our project manager was telling me. I will tell you, I'm not a mason, I'm not a project manager, so I rely on them to tell me what we should be doing. And it really comes down to you guys. If we want to take care of the most immediate need right now, it's that $60-some thousand. If we want to take care of the entire building and repoint it and be done with it, it's the 120 some thousand.
166 and 37.
Okay. So
Shane, can I ask you a question?
yeah, absolutely.
So overall budget, where do we stand?
Yeah, so Mr. Vice President can bring you up to date on some of that.
So
We can talk about that today.
Yeah, we talked about this today here, Shannon and myself here. And we received $190,000 of grants for our sprinklers and our exhaust system, which wasn't in our original budget because we didn't know we were going to get the grants. So, happily we got the grants. We also received quite a bit. I don't have the exact number, but quite a bit of interest on the proceeds from the loans that we took. So it sat in the bank for quite a while because we didn't have to spend the money right away. And I would just add, one thing that I unfortunately have experienced with this, we had a building it was not a 100-year-old building by any stretch of imagination, but had this exact same problem. We unfortunately took the approach to do a little bit at a time, and over 3 to 5 years, it cost us considerably more than if we would have just had it all done. It just kept deteriorating and falling out. So my recommendation would be, we're spending millions of dollars here to do a job properly. Well, I don't like spending $166,000 it wasn't planned for. If we have to spend $63,000 to do it, we should do it right for the extra $100,000, and that's where the money would come, in my opinion.
Could we also save on some doors over at the fire station as well?
Yeah, but what I'll tell you is
I'm just saying.
those kinds of savings are being offset because costs are increased, right?
Right.
And so I gave you what the allowance was. So you have that attachment in there, what the allowance was for the entire project
The
of
bottom line though, Shane, is
work.
this isn't gonna push it over, right?
It is. This is going to be outside. This is going to be outside the original contract price.
Understood that,
But
I'm saying,
You have enough money because of the grant and also because of the amount that we took out in the bond. You have enough money to
that's
take care of that. It's not going to come out of, this won't come out of your general fund.
Correct.
I would warn you that if we get a couple more of these major costs, That's a different conversation.
We don't have a lot more, so as Shane said, I think we showed 54,000 left in the allowance account, but for the most part, that's probably spoken for.
Well,
Yeah,
my only other question is the basement then, because we know that there have been, you've been there since, has that been remedied?
Yeah,
or
so
is
that's
that a question?
gonna, I would say a lot of the allowance, or at least some of the allowance is going to eat up in that basement. It has, obviously, we've gotten the spring rain that we've been waiting for, the test drive, that sealant that they're trying. And what we're seeing is the water is pushing over to another section and wanting to come out. So, we had that conversation in our weekly meeting today of whether or not they think it's going to fully work. Yeah. And they still think it's going to work. I'm not as.
What happens when you blacktop that lot?
So. Here's the concern is the water's coming from the bottom, not from the top. We think that it might be an underground spring that's really pushing the water there. And if that's the case, it doesn't matter what you do up top. The underground spring is kind of the concern. We don't know though, that's the problem, we don't know. We know that when they put the sealant on it, it pushed it over to another section. So
I guess
paving
I
it
just-
might fix the problem. Finishing the job around it might fix the problem, or we just don't know yet.
And Shannon, I want to add one more thing, and I was not at that meeting, but from our project that I'm aware of, outside of here, my project, not ours, mine. A professionally done, well done pointing project should last multiple decades. If it's done correct. Is that what we were told?
Yeah, absolutely. This should last no less than 30 years. You know, if it's repointed the right way.
All right, anybody else have any comments? Councilman Hart?
Yes, while this is a very distasteful pill to swallow, and while I am upset with the engineer not picking up on this when we were given the original estimates, we don't have a choice here, ladies and gentlemen. We really don't. If we did only this partially, it would look like the picture that you see here, where it was done differently. And B, we would have problems in 5 to 7 years, and it will look even worse, in addition to creating more leakages of the Bukkake coming in. So, unfortunately, I think we do not have a choice except to go with the 63 and go with the standard coffee.
166.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Councilman Hart, Councilman Diet?
This contract is a contract, that's a guarantee. They're not gonna start ripping into this and find out that it's gonna cost more.
No, I mean, this is a complete redo, so they're going to tear out all the joints and redo them.
So there's no way that they can come back and say, hey,
Not something, I look, I can't guarantee you anything. I wish I could.
It's
Again,
complete, it shouldn't, but.
again, you know, it's outside my world, but I can tell you that my understanding of how this is done is understand that the blocks are in place, right? All they're doing is taking the compound out, putting new compound in. It shouldn't go any farther than that. The only reason why it would is if for some reason while they're doing it, the blocks fall out. I mean, I don't see how that would happen, but I guess theoretically,
It does happen.
that is something that could
It does
happen.
happen, trust me,
Yeah.
it does happen.
I would say that's the only way that I don't want to be around if that happens.
It does happen.
I might have a coronary.
That should be included in that project.
What's that?
Based on if the flocks, they do fall out once in a while when you do that. I don't know how bad they are.
Mr. Vice President, we're looking for a motion.
Unless anybody else has any comments or questions before we make a motion, we're ready to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that will go with option 3, but with not adding the alternate. So the $166,837.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Lavenberg. Is there a second? Councilman Hart, there's 3 of you. Sorry, I'll look over this way next time.
We're all excited.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions?
So the only thing that I would ask, Mr. Ladenburg, is in your motion, do we have the grapevine, the ribbon, or the standard? From the discussions that I've had, like, the three photos, the grapevine is, it's like somebody takes a pencil down the middle of the, or a putty knife or something down the middle of the caulk. That's the only difference between that and the standard. And then the grapevine though is 6,000 more, and that is
21,000.
yeah, 21,000 more. And that is definitely a little bit different. That's kind of it sticks out farther, right? So you do need to probably decide which of the three. I'm hearing
We looked at.
I'm hearing
we looked at
standard.
Standard because it made it more like flat, Councilman Lavenberg. It made the look more flat and the stone stuck out a little bit clearer.
Well, I didn't know there were choices in 3. I know there was the alternate, but standard's fine with me.
what do you guys like that too? Yeah, it sounds like okay.
Okay, so we have an amended motion, Councilman Lavenberg,
Yes.
amended second. So we have amended motion, and amended second. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, one quick question, Shane. The police department, that whole thing, they weren't sure about what was on the other side or whatever. Is there any, did that move forward at all, or is that one of the last thing that's going to be done? And is there any chance that there's going to be some surprise there that might cost?
So there is a surprise there that's coming. That should be within our allowance. They did the change orders that they've made have been offset by the savings so far of not blowing through the wall in the room. But we are going to see a change order because there is some electrical work that needs to be done there. So we are going to see a change order on electrical upgrade to finish that job. I haven't seen it yet. It hasn't come through because they're waiting on I think the mechanical engineer to do a little bit more work there.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? No. Passes 6-0.
All right, and we also have resolution 2023-14. I didn't write the whole resolution down, but basically it's a resolution to dispose of certain borough records. So I will make a motion to approve resolution 2023-14.
Your second. Councilwoman Baumgartner. Any comments or questions? It's the roll call. No. Resolution. Okay, so all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. Passes 6-0.
With that being said, I report progress.
Thank you. And next is budget and finance. So first on our agenda here is resolution 2023-15. Resolved by Borough Council to authorize the payment of the April 3rd, 2023 bill list as follows. Bill list $356,087.91. Payroll number 6, $176,108.74. Payroll taxes $56,019.12 for a total of $588,215.77 done this third day of April 2023. Would anybody like to put that in a motion?
So moved.
Diet second. Councilman Lavenberg second.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0. All right. There in the agenda, you can see significant revenue expenses for March 2023. And then our next meeting is Thursday, April 6th at 11 a.m. on Zoom, report progress. Next, we have community relations, planning and development. So I assume either Ms. Baumgartner or Mr. Anders is going to handle that tonight. Ms. Baumgartner?
There's nothing to report. For official action. It's April 24th at 4:30 p.m. Progress.
Okay, thank you. And in there, then that's the end of the committee meeting. Next, we have boards and commissions. We have the board meeting report from the Emmaus Public Library in your packet. Next, we have personal appeals part 2. There's nobody in the public here other than a reporter, and there's nobody online except for Councilman Lavenberg, so there's no personal appeals. Next, we have the borough manager report, Mr. Pepe.
I hired a part-time employee to work the compost site. His name is William Judd. He started on Saturday. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons why we want a part-time employee working hours at the site. So a little bit of growing and learning as he's learning kind of the rules, and especially the new rules, as I think Mr. Hart experienced this morning with him. So it was good that we had an experience with a council member, so that way we can make, we can make sure that things are clearly communicated with them, and so that he's learning what to appropriately inform people that they need to do. So he had his first learning moment today. But overall, we're excited that we have a part-time employee working at the compost site. We think that's going to be good for us. Secondly, I hired some seasonal employees. It's that time of the year with lifeguards. Let's see the memo here. So Alyssa Cole and Jasmine Shada both have their Red Cross lifeguard certification, so they are hired. We also have James Raynock, Molly Bear, Neil Orison, Hannah Tiger, Lauren Kushma, William Reichard, Aaron O'Neill, and Sarah Treaster for the pool, and that's contingent upon successful completion of their lifeguard training, which is in progress right now. We've also hired some concession stand employees, Preston Keys, Grace Deppie, Adriana Alvarez, and Sean Guidicelli. And then we also have our returning lifeguards, who are Tristan Monahan, who is our assistant pool manager, Lily McAfee, Catherine Raynock, Enzo Voltieri, Julia Brown, Sophie Laird, Paisley Wimmer, Kiera Walther, Acacia Walk, and Tessa Seagraves. We've also hired cashiers and Bridget Danish, and Kane Wessner, and in concession, returning are Sarah Schmeltzley, Haley Riffle, and Sarah Hawk. They don't make easy names anymore.
I think
What happened to Tom Jones?
I think you got it.
Something
I
easy.
believe he's a singer.
But nonetheless, so we're happy that we're filling the roster. We have a number of lifeguard potential hires. All lifeguard hires are contingent on passing the certification, which is not an easy certification. But if they all get through, we'll have our full complement of lifeguards, concession stand employees, and pool employees early this year. So knock on wood. We are excited that we're able to fill that roster pretty quickly. Other than that, we do need a very short executive session, Mr. Vice President, on a legal matter, just to kind of give you a very brief update on that, and I'll report progress.
Thank
Unless
you.
have questions.
Any questions for Mr. Pepe? Okay, President Lavenberg, it's president's business. Do you have any president's business?
You're president tonight.
I have no vice president or president's business. Then, like Jane just said, we're going to have an executive session. So we're going to take a recess, and we're going to allow the reporter that's here to ask any questions before we take the recess. Before we take the recess.
Once we hit recess, we'll then.
Okay, we'll take the recess at 7:04. Take a recess.
Yes, sir.
Come out of executive session at 7:14. There is nothing for official action. We have a motion to adjourn. Councilman Hart, second by Councilman Valiant, since none of them raised their hand when I looked over there this time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, 6-0. Meeting is adjourned at 7:14.